The time has finally come to paint my engine bay. In my last video, I covered all the prep work that went into this engine bay. And you can see my masking and makeshift paint booth. I mistakenly didn't use an exhaust fan, which in hindsight I should have. And for compressed air, I have two air compressors connected in tandem. Temperature, temperature, temperature. Since it's winter, I have to make sure that the metal of the car is at least 90 degrees. I used a forced air propane heater for this. Obviously, the heater cannot be running while you're painting or when the paint is still fresh and flashing off. As you can see, it's snowing outside, but I still made it work. I started with the primer. This brand is a 4:1 mix ratio. Make sure that the primer is well mixed before pouring. Use a mixing cup to achieve the correct ratio of activator to primer. I used a cheap Harbor Freight spray gun with a 1.4mm nozzle, a tad small on the nozzle side, but I made it work. I then started spraying the engine bay with primer. I focused on the hard to reach spots first, and then worked my way from there. After the hard to reach spots are hit, spray the entire engine bay. This primer was fairly easy to apply and stuck to the metal pretty good. Also, keep in mind that I'm not a painter. There's probably many things I could be doing better here, but I'm just a guy with a $15 spray gun and an air compressor that sounds like it's gonna explode. I applied 2 layers of primer, allowing 30 minutes between coats so the solvents could flash off. After the second layer of primer has flashed off, I fired up the heater to get the metal back to a good temperature. Make sure not to turn on the heater before the solvents have fully evaporated. An open flame plus solvents in a closed area equals kaboom. Since I'll be painting the top areas of the cowl, core support, and fenders white, I masked off any areas that I don't want the textured paint to hit. This is the paint that I ended up going with. Next is applying the Zolatone 20 textured paint. This is a very unique paint, originally meant for Airstream trailers and boats back in the 1960s. Mixing this paint is much different than other paints. You have to slowly work your way down as you stir. Mix up the top 2 inches of paint, then move down another 2 inches and repeat. Failing to do this will ruin the paint. There are suspended balls of paint that are responsible for the texture. If you damage these balls of paint, you won't get any texture. Zolatone 20 is a very unique paint due to its texture, multiple colors, and extreme durability. Ideally, to apply this paint, you want a pressure pot system with a 2.2 or 2.4 millimeter nozzle. I had neither, so I drilled out the nozzle of a 2mm Harbor Freight gun to 2.4 millimeters. The 2.4 millimeter nozzle was used for the first coats, and then a larger 2.8 millimeter nozzle was used for the final coat. A small nozzle will crush the suspended paintballs in this paint and it will ruin the texture. Once the Zolatone is mixed properly, pour some into the pot. Notice the suspended balls inside of the paint. Those balls of paint are what makes the texture. They hit the metal at a fairly high speed and explode that make that nice pattern. Do some test sprays to get the fluid and spray pattern how you like. And in my case, it was setting up the gun properly to get a really nice textured look. Go ahead and start painting the engine bay, hitting the hard to get spots first. Hit every part of the engine bay above and below. Because this textured paint is gray, it's really hard for my camera or GoPro to pick it up. But I promise you, it looks really good in person. I sprayed 2 layers of Zolatone, the first layer with a smaller 2.4mm nozzle, and then the second layer with a drilled out 2.8mm nozzle. That large nozzle got that last bit of texture out that really made the paint shine. And the finished product looks amazing in person. The camera just doesn't do it justice. With the paint mostly dry, I started peeling off the masking tape. Any areas that are taped off will be painted white. I taped off the engine bay to keep the white paint from overspraying onto the gray. And now it's time to start painting the areas with GM Arctic White. I had a few base coat cans handy, however the spray cans had a terrible spray pattern, but they were free. I sprayed the cowl, core support, and the fenders, and then ran out of paint. So the white is a little light and it didn't quite turn out as nice as I wanted, but it's good enough. After the white paint is mostly dry, you can remove the masking. Now it's time for the clear coat. This Zolatone 20 is a super durable paint, so a clear coat isn't necessary. But without a clear, cleaning a textured paint would be impossible. I mixed up a small batch of clear and poured it into my Harbor Freight gun. This gun has a 1.4mm nozzle. Start by applying a thin layer of clear coat. After the first clear coat layer flashes off, you can apply 2 heavier coats. I got impatient and didn't heat up the car enough, so I did get a few minor runs. The Zolatone 20 is a textured paint, so a heavy final layer of clear is needed to level it out. I ended up using 2 whole quarts of clear on this engine bay. I let my heater bake this paint at around 90 degrees for a few hours. The clear coat continued to harden even weeks later, so keep it protected until it fully cures. The following day, I removed all the masking and took down my crappy DIY spray booth. And now half my shop has a thin layer of clear coat mist on it. That's wonderful. The wonders of DIY. But this paint exceeded my expectations. The camera just doesn't do it justice. This textured Zolatone paint has great depth and it just pops when you look at it. So for anyone who doesn't know, my brother is the one making the aesthetic decisions on my car, from styling choices to colors. I'm glad that I went with his recommendation of a gray textured paint with some white accenting. I never would have thought that a light gray engine bay would look so good on a white car. However, this project was a huge undertaking, with much hair pulling and issues left and right, but in the end, it was worth it. Even if it did cost me nearly $800. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram for more updates on this build.